like after our Aud concert, or listening to some podcast or watching these guys do YouTube videos about Norse culture, and they have Thor necklaces and things like that, and they just love the culture. I remember the lead singer of Aud had that one part where he said, music is the language of the planet. Every culture has tuned into that music. It's okay that you're here tonight celebrating the music of this culture. Kind of like giving...
Like it's, we all came here naked. We're all strangers. You know, we were born here and we instinctively want to know where we came from. And,
Yeah.
And so I think that's why this Viking, a lot of the scholars don't like to attach the word Viking to what they're talking about, because it's been trademarked and there's shows and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
So,
And it's not even appropriate. It's not even correct.
right.
Viking is a sea king. Not all Norse pagan people even got on a boat. Well, some of them lived on farms forever, and some of them lived in the hills and the mountains. And so, yeah. But, yeah, so maybe we just had that conversation.
Okay. Well, I mean, yes. I mean, that kind of ties in a little bit to what we're talking today about, which is Gudrid, the well-traveled. We're going to cover her, basically her time in Iceland before she got on the boat and went to Greenland as
Yeah.
a young teenager, or as an older teenager. So is that kind of what you're thinking too?
Yeah, I'm just ready to pepper in background on... I did a deep dive into the different types of Christianity, because we
Oh,
were
good.
wondering last week, what Christianity was she being presented with?
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm just gonna kind of follow your journey and then interject like I do so
Okay.
well, interrupt and interject. Or if you wanna give a time when I do go over the different countries' conversions, that's really interesting. And then I also did a little research on Yggdrasil, the life tree.
Oh,
Yggdrasil, which maybe when we talk more about her religion part or whatever.
that's great. And I kind of did a little dive into her lineage and her family descendancies or whatever, just to kind of round that out with her. But then we're going to talk about her life in Iceland and kind of what was expected of her and why she seems unique. And again, a reminder, one thing that makes her unique is she does appear in two sagas. Icelandic sagas, and by name. And we
Yeah.
get actually three, maybe.
There
Three
are,
of
I think, 3. I think we can count 3. We've got 2 in the Vinland sagas, right? The Green Saga of the Greenlanders and Eric the Red saga. And then in this, Snorri's
Oh,
Heimskringla, in the saga, or it's the history of Olag, since he was he must have jumped on the bandwagon. He was associated with Leif Erikson,
oh,
so he tells the saga too, that. And again, like I said last week, I tried to see if, the Vinland sagas just take from this and put it
oh,
into this.
right.
And it would have been the saga of the Greenlanders. There are very similar, the way it's told, the order it's
Mhm,
told. So I
mhm.
just haven't researched enough to see if that could count as a third saga, but maybe.
I feel like people are starting to talk about that for
Yeah,
sure.
it's a third source, at least. We can say it's
Yeah,
a third source, maybe not a total separate saga, I guess.
yeah.
So anyway, yeah, she's out there. Okay.
So let's see. I want to just start with the base, remind everybody we're talking about Gudrid Thornbarn, our daughter. She is also known as Gudrid the Well-Traveled. And
Mhm.
if you go to our first episode, we kind of did the basics. She was born in Iceland. Um, and basically in Iceland in 980. So we're talking 980.
Show them what you make, Kim. Show them what you did.
Oh, I like big scrolls. And so I take the people and I cross-hatch
It's so awesome.
where they all run into each other.
Yes.
So, but I want to talk about 980 for a minute. It is the height of what people call the Viking era. But Gudrid, one of the reasons why she's going to be so well traveled in our stories is she lives at this kind of the end of the golden age, so to speak, of it depends on if you're in the boat or on land, but of the what started as kind of plundering or trips to get wealth turned into a full-on merchant culture, which and big conquering by the Norse peoples. And she's kind of living at the end of that because Christianity is going to come in and sort of mess with them, but that's not the only thing that's going on. Anyway, so just to let you know, so we've got the Vikings, we've got the Byzantine Empire is still really strong in 900. It was founded in 900. Maya, when she was born, there was the sudden collapse of the Maya civilization. We've got the Vikings, and what happens is as you start from whatever 3000 BC, the Norse during the Roman Empire, which was at the start of kind of what the Vikings, when they started coming in with the Germanic tribes, you have the Roman Empire. That was about 400 CE. So at the time of Gudrid's birth, she's living in a world, she's not from Norway, as we'll discuss. She's living in Iceland, which is a fascinating place to start because it's kind of like the Wild West of this world here in 900 CE, where you have lots of cultures, lots of dynasties, some falling, some building. And for some reason, these people in Iceland at the time were pretty lithe and flexible and going in and out of other cultures and, exploring.
Yeah.
So Iceland has, if you read their Landmanbach or whatever, um,
Land
yes,
book of land taking. The land taking book. So they
yeah,
admit they're taking the land and we're going to write a book about it.
yeah. So people come to Iceland from Norway. They're coming from Ireland. You've got Scottish people, you've got British people, Britons, not British, and you've got pagans, you've got baby Christians coming on there. You've got
Yeah.
exiles. Yes, go ahead.
Can I say one thing I researched about that because I was trying to figure out who was the first foot on Iceland, right? There are Inuit, I guess you'd call them people, indigenous people that were there, but we're not talking like battles or anything. It was the hunting grounds, I think, for different tribes that lived in other places. So they weren't taking over anyone's land. Then I looked at, okay, well, who's the first white people? And it's a rabbit hole, but it's basically monks, monastic monks. So not Roman Catholic monks which is going to play an important part when we start talking about our Celtic people and what Christianity they were doing. It wasn't Catholic. It wasn't Roman. It was, after Christ died, you had his apostles, and then you had believers who kind of, not your famous believers, but people that believed, went off into the desert, and they're called desert fathers of the desert. Yeah. And
like we're talking present day Iraq or Syria or
Syria and Palestine is what I read about. And they are, well, I guess I'm just going to talk, but they love Jesus. They love the church, the religion Jesus had taught, but they didn't have any real canonized doctrine or anything. It was just people that had a belief and they wanted to go spread it. And they made their way up to Europe and set up monasteries or sister houses for women, and they were most of them though were hermits, just a hermit, a man going with the gospel up into Europe, and then kind of converting as people would talk to him. It was a very nature-based
Mhm.
approach to Christianity. That's why I think it blended with paganism so well, and it
Mhm.
wasn't, a diocese, D-I-O is more of a bishop and his geography, and a monastic monk is a monk and people that believed in him around, he didn't rule a geographic area. And so those are
Mm.
the first people that went to, I guess, white people that went to Iceland. And so when the Norse and all these people arrived, they did have these monks there, and I think that's how a lot of them, maybe you're gonna talk about this, but how Christianity kind of was there before the North, a different kind of Christianity.
It's interesting. Can they trace the monks to a particular place? Like, would they be speaking English? Were they Celtic? Were they
There's
Roman?
not a lot written about them that I found, but honestly, I didn't deep dive into them. I can, where they came from. They did spread up through, then they went through Egypt. They must have just wandered up through setting up, or maybe they sailed up and they ended up in Ireland because there's Celtic people are monastic Christians. That's
Yeah.
who those Christians are. They're different. It's a different Christian, and then they have a big that's a big dispute, and they have finally a synod, the Council of Synod,
Mhm.
um, where they have to decide which Christianity they're going to have, and their biggest difference is just what day to celebrate Easter and what kind of haircut to have. Basically, it's like
Yeah, the
so. Anyway,
important things.
yes. So
But
anyway, that's what I was when you're talking about Iceland. It's interesting what pepper thing was already there, or maybe
yeah,
by the time people got there, they did leave a lot of those monks left because they were ran out or whatever. So
but
anyway,
it is interesting how much, and that's a good point, how much the establishment of these monasteries along these sea routes, sorta did, I think something that's important that I had to understand was how mobile these people are. Because in my brain, if you're in 900 AD, you're stuck, you don't go far from home. But at least the Norse people and the Celtic and the Britons who lived near the oceans, they were wanderers, like, and especially the Norse. They would go in the summer and they would marketplace or raid or whatever they're doing, but they all
mhm.
come back to their winter camp, essentially, tell their big stories, get themselves all riled up, and then they go again. But when you read these sagas, they don't talk about how special it was to arrive somewhere on a ship. That's just what they did, and they travel from Norway to Kiev or to Byzantine Empire or Egypt or whatever, and that's just kinda what they did.
Yeah,
Um, but we do see a lot when you start looking at Iceland, and tell me if I'm wrong, but you see quite a few Norwegians because it's what, a 4-day sail west for them to get to Iceland,
yeah,
I
it's
think?
not a big deal at all, and they measure distance in days, not miles. I think I talked about that too, like 4 days from the west coast of Norway to the Faroe Islands or something, and then 2
Mhm.
days from the Faroe Islands to Iceland or something. It's not, I don't know, it's like commuting almost. They were going back and forth with these raids all the time and not long distances.
Mm-mm.
I mean, not always long distances,
Right, right.
but
Um,
and they were dangerous. The raids were dangerous, and they wrote rune stones, they erected rune stones as a tribute to some raid or something. They were commonplace, but they were also, like you said, they came back and they get riled up. They're also getting glory and they're getting promotions and they're getting
mhm,
established. And these raids were pretty important.
mhm,
So going to ice, but then also landing on Iceland, they're not raiding anyone. The monks didn't have anything. The monastic monks were so almost Puritan, you know, Protestant. They
Yeah.
wanted to simplify, they wanted no decor, no fancy things. So, when the first Viking landed in Iceland, what do you think he found? Or what was but not Viking, first Norse person, you
I
know?
think now remind me if I'm wrong, but they found it to be like the sagas talk about it. It's kind of a strange world, right? Did it have trees
It
or
had
was that
trees.
Greenland?
They deforested Iceland.
Yeah. So when
It
they
had
arrived,
trees.
they really needed timber.
Yeah.
And that for many of the people, it wasn't really the conquering, it was most like getting the resources.
Mhm.
So Iceland, when they first arrived, was filled with trees. They quickly denuded all the trees, and that's why it looks so barren today. Also because of weather changes. But at the time period that Gudrid was born in Iceland, it's a period characterized by the most powerful volcanic activity in history was happening
Mhm.
in 934 to 940 AD. So this is her father's alive. They experienced a massive lava flow eruption, which belched 7 miles of lava and massive amounts of sulfur. And so some researchers believe that this event lies in the Volupsa, which is another
Mhm.
saga, right? It's a poem that foretold the end of the Norse gods and the turn towards Christianity. So she's kind of being already, even the land is acting dramatic when Gudrid is born, like with beginnings and endings.
It's the one where the man opens the door and he sees 9 women in black and 9 women in white.
Hmm.
There's so many sagas that again, sagas were actually written down by Christians, so they could have that Christian bent. But there's that one, and then there's one where someone has a dream that they open the door and there's that must not be but it's symbolic of Christianity taking over too. Then there's the one where he sees the tree, that's actually the cross that had been buried, and it's decorated with blood and gold, and it's the new Yggdrasil, the new life tree.
Mhm.
It's interesting. So they must have known change was in the air, right?
I think so because also the world was entering a medieval warming period. So, it had warmer temperatures that allowed them to start. Greenland, of course, was covered in ice, but in their time, there was enough of a coastline there that they could farm.
Yeah.
So,
That's
if you
interesting. So they landed in the most volcanic time in Iceland. That means the skies were bananas. That's crazy. That's
Yeah,
cool.
yeah.
Okay. So that was magical. Okay.
And, so here she's there, but there had been people, I would say the Landmund book start,
Nanamabok.
um, the earliest person related to this is related to Gudrid on her mother's side was a man called Nadadson, who was born in Norway in 840, lived in Iceland, and had a son in 865 in Iceland. So, and then his wife was Norwegian and her background, just to give you an idea of the different backgrounds. So,
Yeah, this is cool.
this guy was one of the first Norwegians to come. So, they'd been there by the time Gudrid was born. Her part of her lineage had been there since 840. So, 100 something years in Iceland. And so the idea when you got to Iceland is you're going to get land but you're also going to go off in the summers with your men, your friends, your kinships and do some raiding, do some manly stuff, although your women went too. And you'd go to Greenland and hunt walrus for the ivory and all that kind of stuff.
Mhm.
Um, so they didn't have a centralized power in Scandinavia yet. And so it was mostly these petty kings, these family groups that would get together with your boys and you'd go down and so they would supplement their income by going on these raids.
Yeah.
So Gudrid does have some Norwegian. But so I'm thinking about her being born in this place. Um, Sorry, you can cut this out. I just
Well,
want
no,
to.
and let me just, I
Yes.
don't think if we've ever so one thing we'll talk about a lot with these raids is we talked a little bit about, contracts between humans. So, like, marriage, a servant, and then these groups that would go out and raid were called lids, Lids, and a lid is your most trusted, almost like as a contract as binding as marriage group of men that you would go on these raids with in your boats, and it was, I guess if it's LID lid, unless it's a D, that D with a lith, I don't know, but friendships were contracts. You could contract a man could contract with a man that you would be a friend with him and loyal to him, and this is how these petty kingdoms and
Mm.
after a raid, you come back with your lid. The leader of the raid would distribute the wealth evenly, so it kind of cut out in these lids, competition or and things like that. Lids in different groups and whatever, they can compete and you would have battles and things like that. But if you had your contracted friendship and loyal people, you could have confidence to do a lot. No wonder they
True.
just almost like a company, like I'm on this company and we go do this raid. And so
And yeah,
I
keep
didn't want to, and I think I got you off track on that, but
no, this is
we're going to
great.
be talking
Keep going.
a lot about these raids. So anyway, okay.
That is absolutely vital to know because that's how these mechanisms operated.
Yeah, and
You're
I think
right.
her dad had and I think her dad had that. I think when those I think
Yes.
this was in practice even in Iceland and these groups too had this contracted, trusted people that you could go off
Yes.
and venture with, you know? So,
So think that's the perfect introduction for
okay.
how we meet Gudrid as she's probably 15 years old in this is from the Eric the Red saga. And it's just, I'm going to paraphrase it, but it's kind of the first time we meet Gudrid. And it's a good jumping off point because there's some questions, some unexpected things happening that we can discuss, I guess. So it starts with Torgir Vilfason, who we will learn is an uncle to Gudrid, but he took to wife Anora, daughter of Einar, from Laugerbrekka, which is called the Slope of the Hot Spring, and it's the western side of Iceland, the son of Sigmund, the Eon of Kettle Thistle. So just start playing, keeping these little words rolling around in your head. And then here comes Gudrid's, because I just wasn't sure who her mom was. Okay, the second daughter of Einar was named Halvig. Thorborn Vifilsson took her to wife. So I'll get to it. But
You're fine.
um,
The sagas, we kind of have to tell them we appreciate them because we read them. So telling them is good.
yeah, I think, okay, so I'm just going to follow through this and then we can pick it apart if we want or go down our rabbit trails. But okay, so Thorborn Vifilsson took Helvig to wife. This is Gudrid's father and Gudrid's mother. And of course, in Family Search, she is just Mrs. Vifilsson or
Right.
whatever. But we
Right.
know a little bit more about her. To the spot that is it Torborn? Removed his abode and became great and worshipful. He was the temple priest and had a magnificent estate. Thorborn's daughter was Gudrid, the fairest of women and of peerless nobility in all her conduct. So what an introduction.
So that is an interesting translation.
It's a weird
That's
translation.
different than my translation. I like that better. Mine
It's
is she was the most attractive of women and one to be reckoned with in all her dealings.
ooh, I love that.
That's cool.
This,
Okay.
I think, is this translation I just pulled up is like the Sagas for Dummies. Like
I
the new
don't think
it's like
so.
difference between the New International Version of the Bible and the Saint, you
Oh,
know.
really? Because I like the way he said that.
Well, it's simple, but we're gonna be introduced to Gudrid as a 15-year-old, and remember, this is 980 AD, and we're getting a flavor of, a young girl's life in this remote island. So there was a man named Orm who dwelt at Arnastapi, which is Eagle Rock, and he had a wife who was named Haldis. He was a well-to-do farmer, a great friend of Thorborn, so start putting their friendships together.
Yeah.
And Gudrid lived at his house as his foster child for a long time. We'll have to talk about the fosterage traditions in the North with the Norse and the Celtics. And it doesn't mean her mother wasn't there. It just, that's when your child turned 14, they were smart enough to realize that child's not going to listen to you anymore. And you need to go
Right.
need to go learn things from someone else's home.
Which is
So
a time tested, honored. We've got
yes.
our Salem people doing that. I mean, they're
Mhm. Yeah, and you'll often see the, this is a world inhabited, you got to remember, by things that we don't see in our world. Hopefully, we don't see them. But when
elves. You're talking about elves?
no, I wish. I am going to introduce the thralls.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, yeah.
um, we should edit all this out,
No,
but
I love it. Do it.
so, okay, it doesn't mean that her parents hate her or don't love her.
Right.
She comes from the other sagas talk about her well-mannered life and a good life, and, in fact, her father and his brother married 2 sisters, which they just told us, and the sisters are the ones that have way back some Vandal blood and some Tunisian, they've got a lot of stuff going on in their DNAs, but um, that we'll cut that part out. Anyway,
No. None of this we're
so
cutting
so
out.
what
All of this
happens
is
is
good.
we see Gudrid not as some orphan. She does have a mother, but the fact that her father has chosen his other friend, his man friend, his best buddy and his lit or whatever, for her to live there, then he had a lot of esteem for this man and trusted that.
Yeah.
And what's interesting is they were under the rule of whatever religion your master or wherever your householder was, that's the one you had to follow. So we can talk about that a little bit with Gudrid's raising. But anyway, so she would have been probably at this house for 3 years already, quite a bit of time, or maybe longer. But let me keep going. Okay.
Okay. Then we'll get back to how she's raised.
Yes, because we're going to, well, let me just, okay. Now, these sagas wander like a menopausal woman, like, they just wander from person to person, so they're gonna tell you about, well, okay, I'm sorry. Let me
Set the scene for when
set the
Orm
scene.
sees her. Like,
Okay.
it's a productive. I picture it kind of a bustling. They didn't really have towns, but they had their longhouses or their farms. You had people, a blacksmith, you had traders, you had women weaving. It was an active, busy place.
Yes, and it
And
was, Yeah, go ahead. Can you describe it a little bit more?
Well, I guess I'm going to be pulling from a bunch of different
Let
sources.
me set the scene
Okay, do
and we'll
that.
pick it apart because when I started reading the sagas trying to find Gudrid in them, this was like, what? In these few paragraphs, you kind of can see this Norse world come alive a little bit. But
Yeah.
so we meet Gudrid in the sagas. She's a foster child, or she's living in the household of Orm. And while she's there, there's a man named Torgir who dwelt at Torgir's Fall. So that's his land. He was mighty rich in cattle and had been made a freedman. All right, so that gives you some clues. He had a son whose name was Einar, a handsome man, well-mannered, and a great dandy. My translation must have been from the 1800s.
Very cute. Dandy.
So
Okay.
Einar, so you can picture him, and he at this time, he's probably 19, 20, was a traveling merchant sailing from land to land with great success. And he always passed his winter either in Iceland or Norway. So you get a flavor for this rhythm of coming and going and riches. And now, after this, I tell how that one autumn, when Einar was in Iceland, he proceeded with his wares along Sneffelsnes, which is the area that her father and his brother, they had their farms. And we'll get into that in a minute. With the object of selling. So he's got his wares from his plunders. He's hawking them off to everybody. Orm invited him to stay there, and Einar accepted his invitation. Because there was friendship between him and Orm's people, his
Mhm.
wares were put into a certain house, outbuilding. Basically, Orm's going to set up a shop for Einar and help him out. There he unpacked his merchandise, showed it to Orm and the houseman, and bade Orm take thereof some things as he would. Orm accepted the offer and pronounced Einar to be a goodly gallant traveler and a great favorite of fortune. When now they were busy with their wares, a woman passed before the door of the outhouse. So we get a woman entering into a saga in the same paragraph as they're talking about the wares and the traveling and the friendships and all this. And Einar's he's probably really young, 19 or 20. He's
Yeah.
probably pretty proud of himself, feeling pretty fancy. Einar saw her passing, and he inquired of Orm. And if you want a better translation, tell me.
Oh, this is
Inquired of
cute. It's
Orm.
filling in all the little like it says it's autumn time. I mean, that's someone had to research your translation to figure that out. So that's cool.
Yeah. So here they are in this outbuilding that Orm's put. And you're right, in these farms, there's lots of people going around. There are women, men, children. There are thralls or slaves,
Mhm.
freed people, unfreed people. Um, and we get a little glimpse of this market economy here. But Einar says, who that fair woman might be passing before the door. I have not seen her here before, said he. That is Gudrid, my foster child, said Orm, daughter of Thorborn the Franklin from Laugerbrecka. She must be a good match, said Einar. Surely she has not been without suitors who have made proposals for her, has she?
Wow,
So,
that's so funny. My
what does
translation
yours say?
mine says Einar spoke. She'd make a fine match. Or has anyone already turned up to ask for her hand?
I love
This
how
is
in the middle
interesting.
he's trading, he's might as well get himself a wife.
Yeah, and did it say the part where he loves his fine dress? We'll have to talk
No,
about that too, how what these when you're done, remind me to go back and let's talk about that. No, this is great. So he sees her, they're in the shed working and putting his wares away, and he sees Gudrid pass in front of the shed door and he asks about her. And has anybody proposed to her yet?
which these people are very direct.
I love them.
There's no small talk.
No.
Um, but yeah, does it talk about, I think this one's just giving us a bare bones, but I just wanted to introduce Gudrid as she appears. So she must have made an impression.
And it says she's choosy about her husband, you know.
Yes.
Orm says she's been asked for right enough. So people have been asking to marry her, but she's choosy about her husband, as is her father as well. So that's your first clue that, and you get lots of clues in the sagas. Lots and lots of men don't make big decisions until they ask their women on big things.
Mhm.
And that women definitely had a say-so in their lives, in their choice. Certain class of women. There are women that are not making any choices for themselves. But this middle merchant class type of woman got to have a say in her future and who she married and where she went, what she did. And even if that's not reflective of all the Norse, to make it into sagas as much as it does, because like I said, this isn't the only time they're talking about a woman making up her own mind,
Mhm.
says something, I think.
Yeah, and they don't say it, Omar is actually, I think he's saying it as, respect for how he mentions her thoughts on the matter.
Right.
You think the other cultures, other societies, no one considers the woman's thoughts. So I'm
Yeah.
thinking 900 AD. Okay, this is a different world we're stepping in. I like it.
And I
Um,
wonder if it's not to bash on Christianity, but stuff that I've read is that Christianity did kind of put women in their place a little bit.
I
I guess I should write down things that pop into my head and go back and talk about them
Well,
instead of
that's the problem
interrupting.
because we could pick this apart sentence by sentence, because
We
my
really
thought
could, but I
was,
don't think people would follow. I think what you're doing is the correct way to do it. And
well,
I just have to write down, I wanna go back and talk, like we brought up her childhood with Pagan, right?
yeah,
That's kinda what we're gonna talk about.
yeah.
I wanna
So,
talk about his clothing because I think that's a good time to talk about the clothing because we are fleshing this group out. Through her saga, we're fleshing out this
yeah,
whole society, right?
yeah.
And
And
then
then
did you wanna talk about slavery? No.
I will take us back to what I know about her dad because
Her dad.
that will take us to your Christianity discussion.
Yes, because I am ready to talk about that. Okay, I
Okay.
like where so you're gonna finish
I'm
telling.
just going to finish four more sentences.
Oh, sorry.
No, well,
Okay.
that's not true. A couple more paragraphs, which I
You
do
go as
think,
far as you feel.
I'm just gonna take it to,
Which part?
the part where Thorborn, we just meet him and he's
Before he leaves?
insulted. He's insulted by the slave
Yes.
thing. And
Okay.
then I'm gonna say, that was a weird response. Who is why would that, I don't
Okay.
know. I
Yeah,
don't
go with
know.
that. That's cool.
Okay, I would like you to pick apart his outfit because they said he was a dandy.
Yeah.
And I
We'll
think
talk
we can
about
slow down a little with that.
yeah, it won't take
Don't you
long
think?
because 'cause we'll talk
Yeah,
about them again, but just to visualize these people so they're not picturing people with helmet horns coming out of their hat.
yeah. Okay. All
Okay.
right. All right. So we are meeting Gudrid for the first time in the
Yeah.
sagas as this beautiful, we're gonna see her here as, does she answer Einar? Do we hear her speak in your translation?
We don't even know if she even knows that he asked in my
Okay.
translation.
Okay, good. Okay. So, Einar, who to me just seems like a wiener, I don't know why. He just
I
seems like
know.
he's flaunting and a
Isn't
woman
that
walks
funny how they can color that out in 2
Yes!
sentences, just a couple of words. They're so good with their words.
That's what I love about the sagas because it reads pretty modern.
Yeah. They're
Um,
enjoyable. I would say any listener, get yourself a book of sagas and cozy up, and they're
mhm,
hilarious and they're deep, and I cried in some of them.
mhm.
They're cool. Okay.
Yeah. So, tell me, can you tell us what about you know why he's important? Because he's a version of manhood that you see with some of these Norse people, but
Okay.
but they're I don't know. Or should I
There
just keep
is.
going?
No, and a lot of no, 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 because this is good because 'cause we're talking about Einar, and who wants to go back and talk about Einar? But, there is a lot through all of it, through Norway, Sweden, Finland, this Norse culture, there's a struggle for the young man, and it is, because polygamy
Mm,
exists, so old guys are
mhm.
picking up all the women, and these raids and merchants was a way for him to get status, and but even beyond that, not even just these young men, this culture is done a great disservice in our modern, uh, echoing of them or whatever, on what they are not dudes with horned hats, they aren't Conan the Barbarian, they are super almost made fun of. The Anglo-Saxons made fun of them on how freaked out and meticulous they were in their dress, in their clothing. They they trimmed their beards very short. They had a particular haircut, which a lot of the boys had back in the day, of like super short up the back and long in the front, you know?
Oh, yeah, that's right.
And that so much that the Anglo-Saxon teenagers started doing it and the priests had to yell at them. They had women wore there were different levels depending on class, but whatever class you wore, you dressed your best for that. And you had linens or flax or there was no cotton, hemp, I guess, too,
Mhm.
wool clothing that was always you didn't just wear a shift or whatever. Then you had another layer that you would put on. They had the double brooches with kind of a beaded necklace in between. They always had jewelry or bracelets. The men were they were very into how things smelled, which I love, which
Oh,
means
I
I'm
do
definitely
too.
related to them, you
Yeah.
know? They wanted to smell nice. They, again, were groomed and clean shaven. The word, Saturday for them is lav, has the word water in it, because Saturday was the day they bathed. So they bathed every Saturday. I can't remember if we talked about this before in an episode or not. In so much that in Constantinople, the king built them their own bathhouse because they bathed all the time every week, so they had their own bathhouse and the guard. And then again, when they were living on half of Britain, and they were even slaughtered once because the Anglo-Saxons knew when to attack the Norsemen. It was always on a Saturday after they bathed. Um, and they loved color. They didn't dress in
Mhm.
brown and drab clothing. They knew how to dye clothing, and they loved blue, bright blues and reds, and
Yeah.
the rune stones that we find now, we're just seeing the stone with the carving, but those had been painted and decorated. Their boats were painted bright colors. Their homes, every inch was carved or decorated. Their spoons that they used and their bowls had carvings. Everything. Everything was decorated to the nines with them in gold and when they talk about the longhouses, if you walked in at night when the fires were going, the whole longhouse was shimmering and glimmering because they had these little gold rectangles with carvings on them of different things. Some were like porn, some were love, some were just good luck that would be decorated around the whole longhouse. Their helmets were decorated, and sometimes they had these gold. So just picture this. It's not this drab medieval. It was muddy and yucky or whatever, but it's not this. These weren't ugly, icky, muddy, stinky.
Mm-mm.
people. They were highly groomed, very interested in what they looked like. And Einar is just a reflection of that. And when you add, then he's also this youthful guy trying to get a wife in this land of polygamy and very few women. And the women that you did find could have their own mind. They didn't have to marry you. You
Right.
had to have a
Right.
dowry, like we said last time. You had to have money to get a woman. So
Right.
he's kind of of a reflection on that. So yeah, he's probably this arrogant dude, but he's also just trying to make a life for himself.
And they they're interesting, as you'll discuss, or we kind of discussed last week, is you cannot enter their world with our framework.
Mm-mm.
Like, all these labels we have for different masculinity, or they're very different, and you only can figure it out with a kind of an open mind, because they had bro codes.
Oh
Like,
yeah.
there were, even in battle or in merchants or anything like that, there was honor involved, even the way you spoke to each other, or the oaths that you kept, or and then on Iceland, people are killing their neighbors over honor and things like that. We'll get to that, but that's
Hmm.
the darker side of this culture. But they had a sense of equity and
Oh
fairness in all things, and
yeah,
that's why I
leader.
yeah.
Sorry, go. Sorry,
No, no,
sorry,
go
sorry.
ahead.
Well, like we said, leader to his group of men, um, is I think there's a rune that reflects that the whole meaning of the rune is that you distribute your wealth. It's instilled in their
Yes.
religion to distribute your wealth equally amongst your group or your men or your lid or your family.
Mhm.
Um, but for these young men, there was also expected that you go out and you create your own group and farm and lid and.
Right.
So
So, I mean, Einar is really doing what he's expected to do. So he's definitely not unique,
no.
but he's a great symbol of this type of a 19, 20-year-old young man who travels. He's probably been down to the Hebrides and down to
Yeah.
Ireland, and or Kiev, or he could be in a million different
Oh,
places
he
at
could
this
have.
time
For
period.
sure, yeah.
Yeah. So
That's Oh, and the one last thing I would say
oh,
is that when you just reminded me is the every place they traveled, they brought back that influence. So a lot of their dress and garb, you can kinda tell they went to, like, the Estonia or places like that. They would come back with kinda that dress or that fabric or that material. They weren't, shy of being brave with their fashion choices and setting trends. And you could even in the burials that they find, they can tell what region they're from based on the trend at the time. Like, there was a certain area where women, instead of wearing the metal brooches, they would wear boxes, which ended up being
oh,
I think they were relic boxes that from the raids from
from the monasteries.
but they wore boxes, and they were the only group that were being brave to wear box brooches now, and you could open it, and there was a little. So the fashion and they were getting inspiration from the places they went and bringing it back. I think that's cool. That reminded me of that.
That's what, the archaeological things that are happening in this world. So fun to talk about right now, because it seems like every day they're finding new things and figuring it out. But just in that outfit you described of the woman alone, think of all the influences that, what Gudrid would have been wearing on this remote island in Iceland, would have the circle brooches she might have had, a lot of things were influenced. And they said that in Iceland, DNA wise, most of the men, they say, were of Norwegian or whatever descent, but 70, 80% of the women were from Ireland, Scotland, Britain.
Yeah.
So Gudrid will tell that story of how, but there's such a blend of things going on in her world. But
Yeah.
so can you describe what Einar was wearing? The sagas tell us, right?
I think it just
Sorry.
mentions that he was very worried about what he dresses like. So I guess as a man, there were a couple different things they could wear. A lot of them like to wear, depending on if you were coming from the East and Russia, they did wear those, or even the South, those kind of bloomy pants that kind of you shove into your boots and they kind of pop out the top of the boot,
Uh-huh.
or just regular pants. They had tunics. They had, that's the thing, the fashion was so influenced by so many different places.
Yeah.
They must have just been gorgeous and fascinating and, you
I
know
yeah. I got, at Gudrid's end of her life, she goes on this pilgrimage, and I kind of was trying to research what kind of hotels she had to stay in and stuff. But
Yeah, that's cool.
at one point it mentioned people would have known and noticed her due to her fashions because they mention the colors, like the blues and the kind of the flair that they had. They would have definitely noticed her on the pilgrimage as this unique specimen of woman. She would have been striking. Um, so Orm
You see, Orm wants to propose to her, and he
so Orm
asks
is a
no,
good
Einar
buddy.
wants to propose to
Yeah,
Orm.
and
Well,
Einar's
Einar
like,
wants Orm to, yeah, okay.
yeah, Einar feels like he's home for the winter. He might as well pick up a woman because it's clear he's made his fortune. And then what happens? Most of them would settle down in Iceland with their farm and their women, and have a base there. So
And start their
he's
own longhouse,
he's
yeah.
behaving the way he should be
He
behaving.
is. Mhm.
Um, but so he says she must be a good match. And Orm answers, and he's a dutiful bro guy because he's like, proposals have been made, friend, but this treasure is not to be had for the picking. It is found that she will be particular in her choice, as well as also her father. So the friend is establishing this is an honorable woman, this is an honorable family. It's not going to be so easy for you to do this. So then Einar goes, well, in spite of that, she is the woman whom I have in mind to propose for by one look as she crosses
Yeah.
the door. And I wish that in this suit of mine you approach her father on my part and apply yourself to plead diligently for me, for which I shall pay you in return a perfect friendship or whatever. Her father, Thorbjorn, may reflect that our families would be suitably joined in the bonds of affinity, for he is a man in position of great honor and owns a fine abode. But his personal property, I
Mhm.
am told, is greatly on the decrease. Neither I nor my father lack lands or personal property, and if this alliance should be brought about, the greatest assistance would accrue to Thorbjorn. So he's making his negotiation now. Um, Orm answers, of a surety I consider myself to be thy friend, and yet am I not willing to bring forward this suit. For Thorbjorn is of proud mind, and withal a very ambitious man. So we're getting kind of a good glimpse into manhood a little bit here.
Yeah. And it seems that Einar had done his research a little bit because he knew that Gudrid's dad was having some hard time. He sounds like he was land rich, money poor, and this guy was land poor, money rich, you know?
Yeah.
And it probably would
And
have been a good.
and if you're an older dude who, let's say, this isn't Thorbjorn's case, but if you're an older guy, it's been several years since you've probably gone on a summer adventure and
Right.
hit up some monasteries and stuff. So
Yeah, you're relying on your farm to.
yeah. Einar replied that he desired no other thing that his offer of marriage should be made known. So here's a young man who feels like his money and his current conquests can buy him anything. which is interesting.
Uh-huh.
Orm then said, I'll go talk to him. And Einar journeyed south again until he came home. So see how he's back and forth and these people are coming and going. A while after, Thorbjorn, Gutrid's father, had a harvest feast, as he was bound to have because of his great rank. So there's lots of expectations. The Norse culture, and I'm saying the Norse culture, but we'll find that Thorbjorn is inheriting this culture kind of. But it really, among even the Celtic tribes and the Gallic, there's a feeling of reciprocity that you
You
have
have to share
peace.
your wealth. You have to. It's your
Yes.
duty. It's your
Yeah.
religious, it's your conviction, it's who you are. It's absolutely, yeah, which is different, I think. It's nice to hope it's good to think that every leader in the planet will share their goods with their people, but not so.
Right. So we're starting to see some of these social fetters, right? It's a feast he was bound to have. So if we know the little clue that he's not doing well with money, it's probably he has to have it. He has to do it. Orm was there, Arnar Stoppy, and that's the eagle guy, and many other friends of Thorborn were at his harvest feast. So now we're back at Gudrid's birthplace, at her father's home. And Orm entered into the conversation with Thorborn and told him how Einar had lately been to see him and was a promising man. Now Orm's doing his best. He now began to woo on behalf of Einar and said that an alliance between the families would be very suitable on account of certain interests. There may arise to thee, Thorborn, he said, great assistance in thy means from this allowance. So there's a lot different ways that Thorborn could have answered, but he answers, I did not expect the like proposal from thee, that I should give my daughter in marriage to the son of a thrall, and so thou perceivest that my substance is decreasing. Well, then my daughter shall not go home with thee, since thou considerest her worthy of so poor a match. Orn went home, all his household guests left, and Gudrid remained with her father and stayed at home that winter. So
Do you
let's.
think do you think Gudrid maybe liked Einar?
I don't know. I don't know because she could have talked her dad into it. I mean,
She would have talked her dad into it, maybe.
she would have. And what are some other words they use to describe her? Um,
Well, that she is knows her own mind. And one to be reckoned with in all her dealings. To me, that says that she's not told what to do, which, yeah, she's not told what to do. You have to explain and consult. And we'll see later that she
mhm.
is asked, her husband's ask her questions first before they make decisions. And, you know, so I guess I'm just being romantic that maybe she wanted to go back and now she has to stay at her dad's house and can't go back to where Einar is, and it's a long, sad winter for her or whatever. But
Well, you have to wonder a little bit because, yeah. So, um, but there's a phrase in here that gave me pause, which, you know, the word thrall, which we know means slave,
slave.
from being captured and things. And so what bothered Thorborn was not maybe who Einar, his personality, or that he's a dandy, or that he's throwing his money
Yes.
around. It seems interesting that the thing that bothered him, and Thorborn kind of gave Orm, his bro, a talking to. I can't believe that you think this was a good marriage consideration. Why should I give my daughter in marriage to the son of a thrall? Well, yeah,
It made sense. On paper, it made sense, but he's got deeper issues.
he does. And so that's where um, I dug into who is this father? Who is he? And Thorborn, if you didn't know anything, I would think he was a Norway guy. I would think he has a land, so he's been working hard. He's a landowner. And since he's appearing in a saga, I would think he might be an elite, living
Yeah.
in with elite society. Turns out, though,
Sorry. Let me.
that Thorborn, although he's reluctant to sell his daughter to the son of a slave, Thorborn's father was a slave as well. So
Yeah.
Thorborn was not a free man. And I started to look into that a little bit, just to think about who she is and who he was. So,
Right. And how important it was in the sagas to even point any of this out, you know,
yeah,
that this issue was something that was important enough to put into the saga at all, you know? They could have
right.
skipped right to the good stuff at the end, but they really the Olaf, the Snorri's talks about this too. It's important enough to talk about this coming from a thrall, you know? I think they all had that. A lot of them had this issue, I think.
And
So
especially in Iceland, in Iceland, you do have the Norwegians who are highborn. As we'll find out from Vilfil's story, Gudrid's grandfather's story, they're living on land that belongs to their Norwegian masters. So
mhm.
Gudrid isn't born in Iceland because she wanted to be. Vilfil wasn't born in Iceland. Her father. Well, okay, let me just straighten it out. So I
'Kay.
went back and I'm like, who is this guy? We don't know who his mother is. Who is Gudrid's father? Why would he be so offended? And why would he mention the lower social standing? So that that's a problem. He's thinking in hierarchical
Yeah.
rank, but what makes someone noble or free? And so I started looking into, is this the right time or are we bored?
No, this is good unless you wanna go back and talk about her childhood real quick. I don't know.
Yeah.
Because are we gonna talk about well, where you're going is real
Maybe I'll do a basic sketch. I'm not gonna
you have
give 20 pages. I'm just gonna say what I found out.
say whatever you wanna say. This
Uh,
isn't boring. This is good.
okay, so I checked on the lineage of who is her father, Thorborn. Why is he so offended? In fact, we know he most likely had thralls working on his property because
Mhm.
he had been, you know, there's lots of fights about it. Like Eric the Red, his thralls collapsed a slope of his neighbors and he got in trouble for it. So, um,
Weren't thralls slaves were not, always what you picture, like, in chains and tied to poles, like, and you see in movies in this age. They were valuable most of them were valuable members of the longhouse, of the community of the farm or whatever, and, trusted, and it depends on where you got your thrall from. A lot of these thralls were coming from prominent families or educated families or understood they could understand their fate a little bit too, that slaves were freed sometimes and could get their own land or
yeah.
like it wasn't, and this is over there were obviously cases, especially if you were a girl thrall, there's studies that they saw that they didn't get as much food, they were undernourished, they were obviously essayed.
Mhm.
Like, I'm not talking about that situation, more with her father, her father's idea of slavery or thrallhood would have been, he shoulda had a little bit more it's interesting his pride about this, you know?
Yeah. So, I mean, because it obviously hit a nerve,
It
because
did, it hit a nerve.
logically, if he was losing money, it would be smart of him to marry his daughter off. That's
Yeah,
how you kind of linked
it's a
yourself in with
contract.
new people. Yeah. it would have been good advantageous for him. So I kind of looked back at the grandfather. So Thorbjorn and his brother Thorstein were born in Iceland, and they were farming together, almost like co-kings, or there were always groups of two men that were kind of sharing.
They were
The
married. They had a married friendship. There's a word
Yeah,
for it. A contracted friendship, but they were
yeah.
brothers. That's
And
fun.
they were married to two sisters, but you look back a little, one more generation, so you see Thorbjorn being upset that the son of a slave would ask for his daughter's hand in marriage. Well, Thorbjorn is the son of a slave.
Right.
And his father, we only know him by the name Vilfil, which was a term that was given to slaves, or it was a kind of it meant beetle, or it was something to demean that person. So that wasn't the name he was born with. So I went back to find out placing where the grandfather was from, what kind of thrall was he, what was his story. And
Interesting.
yeah, it it's interesting because what logically, if you put all the pieces together, it's very likely Vifil was born. This is Thorbjorn's father, so remember this, Gudrid's grandfather. He was born in, let's see,
You
sorry.
found out where he's born.
I think I found it.
Wow.
Um, okay. I'm trying to make sure that I have the right boy. Okay. Vilfil Ketilsson is the name that appears on the family search records for Thorbjorn's father. Um, they name him as Vifil Ketilsson, which is a clear indicator already that you've got a thrall situation going on. Because if you see Ketilsson or you see Vifil, it indicates that's a name that was given to them by their
Okay.
captors. It's date-wise, Vilfil looks to be from the Altklude tribe, which is a tribe of.
Was he from Ireland? Is he the one from Ireland? Because
So,
let's talk about Aud maybe maybe scoop him up with Aud.
okay, well,
Is that right?
yeah, so let me go back then. So in 874 was the first Viking settlement of Iceland, 874. Um, this is the time, kind of the age of the heady times for any kind of Viking
Yes, for sure.
activities. So in 830, we have, is she another grandma of ours or not?
She is. We're related to her.
Yes.
Hmm.
Um, what's the best way to tell this?
Which is interesting we're related to her because she's not blood with Gudrid. She was the slave. She's the owner of Gudrid's grandpa.
Okay, let's see. I'll do this. Let me think how to do this.
Okay.
Um,
I'm going back to my notes on Aud.
yeah. Okay, so we know based on where Vilfil's farm is in Iceland, Lauger, Brexica, those are the lands of Aud, the deep-minded. Her descendants are living there. She's another really interesting woman. She's one of Iceland's most significant settlers. Her timeline is defined by the migration of her family across the Norse world and her decision to grant freedom and land to the slaves she carried with her from Iceland.
Hmm.
So it's based on who Orm is, who um, Gutrid's father's lit or group is. They were all settled in Aud's lands and came
Isn't
with
that
her.
cool that we're talking about Gudrid, but her whole life was set up by this other woman, Aud. Some people call her Aud the deep-minded. What is her actual last name? It's Aud. Uh,
let's see. Well, she was born in the 18
Aud Kettles. She's a Kettle's daughter.
she's
How does
the
that work?
original. Kettle Flatnose was her
Her
father,
husband or her father, yeah. And
and
she married Olaf the White from he was
yes.
Dublin.
So, yeah, so Odd the Deep-Minded in the 830s, 40s was born in Norway to Kettle Flatnose. Kettle Flatnose becomes a big player down in Brittany and down in
Ireland, yeah.
Ireland. And so that's why you'll see many thralls calling themselves Kettleson because they
Oh,
were his
okay. So it's
captives.
not just a term for a slave, it's actual lineage of who their owner was or who brought
Yes,
them over.
because we have
Okay, that's
Vilfil.
interesting.
Vilfil is listed as a Kettleson. Um, that's our grandfather of who we're talking about.
Yeah.
Um, so his name in the family search is actually a double thrall indicator.
Wow, okay.
Yes. So, so we've got Odd. Okay. So her father, she's born in Norway. She moves
Odd.
to the
Okay.
Hebrides. Yeah,
And the Hebrides are west of Scotland, right? Little set of islands west of Scotland,
a
right?
bunch of islands.
Yeah.
Her father, who was from Norway, established himself as ruler there in the 850s. So she's the daughter of a petty king who's taking over all these lands. And the Hebrides kind of sit wedged between the Britain world and the Irish world. So she would have learned, she probably knew 4 to 5 languages.
Yeah.
She was actually Christian, which her father would not have liked, but she was. And they say she was influenced in the Hebrides by that sort of Christianity that was being practiced there.
Which would have been the monastic,
Okay.
um, yeah. So the, uh, man, I don't know. I'm torn if I would have liked this one or not. It's very blah, very,
Mm,
um, flat, but it is nature, like I said. They use
yeah.
nature. They were very into, um so, like, the Celtic region, which this is, at the time, they used their religious leaders were the Druids for the pagan part of it,
Right.
which was and when you study how the Druids kind of what was important to them seemed very similar to what this type of Christianity was also important to them. You
I
had, science and studying the stars and using kind of the world and the planet and nature and the heavens as a way to incorporate it in their religion, kind of.
Okay.
So
Um, yeah.
yeah. So we're not talking
And
that she was, I
so
don't
it's
think she
not
was
like,
baptized Roman Catholic where she was going that way yet, but
yeah.
definitely
Um,
Christian. She loved Jesus, that's for sure.
I saw one term, and you know more about it than I do, um, called Gaelic Christianity, which
Mhm.
was more like sacred nature and thin places.
Yeah, thin places meaning, mystical spirits could come talk to you. They weren't, because the Roman Catholic, they wanted to get rid of that, and you had no personal revelation, no spirits coming from the other side. That was evil. If that happened, that was a demon. They could,
Okay.
but this kind of Christianity still was mystical and,
So it's
very pagan-y,
yeah,
you know?
that's interesting.
So
So
she would have been that way, but still, if you're a pagan, you don't wanna, you know, they were still covering up pagan sacred spaces with chapels and things like that. That was happening too. So,
right, right. Well, so yeah, so she spends her life with a dad who's conquering people right and left, and she would have spent her life with thralls, people captured from Ireland, from Britain, from even from France, all sorts of places, wherever her dad went, they seem to, as this time period, if you go to Egypt, if you go to Turkey, if you go everywhere, they're trafficking in people, unfortunately. So she would have been pretty comfortable. That would have
Yeah.
been part of her world.
Yeah.
Um,
And it seems like she was pretty fair with a certain class of thrall.
yeah. And so, okay, so the 850s, she marries Olaf the White in Dublin. He's the Viking king of Dublin. So
Mhm.
you're talking interesting culture happening here. So she goes to Dublin, which of course Dublin was one of the big markets for thralls and slaves
Yeah.
coming in and out. They actually had the slave markets.
Yeah.
They were,
That's probably why a lot of women DNA in Iceland are from there, which means a
yes,
lot of the women in Iceland were probably slaves brought over.
yes,
Yeah.
yes. And they had one son, Thorstein the Red, which of course, if you look at um,
Not to be confused
Gudrid's,
with Eric the Red. Yes.
right, right. Um, So Thorstein, her son, conquered nearly half of Scotland, supported by his mother. So that you're talking the Picts are there, who are considered a different type of people than the go ahead.
I think that's Braveheart, right? They painted themselves blue.
Yes. And they're the
Yeah.
ones the Romans were really afraid of.
Yeah. The
So
Picts did not convert. They did not like the Romans. The Anglos brought over the Saxons to fight the Picts, and then the Saxons ended up taking over the Anglos, and now you have it's like these guys were fierce up there.
the Romans had to actually build two huge walls to kind of contain them up in the
Yeah.
northern part of Britain. And so yeah, so this one woman had been to Norway, lived in the Hebrides, which, you've got the Falkland Islands, you've got all those places up there, right?
Yeah.
Then she marries the king of Dublin. So she's dealing with Irish people. And then her son is killed by the Scottish chieftains. And so she's in Dublin in a hostile land, and she secretly commissions a ship to be built in the woods by her thralls. So it tells you something about the people, the kind of maybe ruler, or whatever she was, is she had people who were able to build ships, who were able to sail ships,
Yeah,
who were able to
really.
communicate with her, who were, um,
Interesting.
yeah,
Yeah. So I missed did she so this is after her husband died, right? Was
yeah,
killed?
sorry.
And
Her,
he was a pagan. He never converted to Christianity.
mm-mm,
So
mm-mm.
that's a
And
theme we're gonna find out. The women seem to convert quicker than the men. Okay.
That's right, which is weird. In 870, though, while Thorstein is conquering everything and his mom, Aud, is living in Dublin, there was a huge capture that happened in the north of Scotland. And one particular is the one that I think where Vilfil was living, based on all the indications from different sources. So there was a Viking siege to a kingdom called Dumbarton. Not a kingdom, but it's a place, a rock particularly, that's located on the River Cluny. And it was, they were called the Altclude people, kind of a tribe of these people who were actually Welsh, but had been separated. Down in the southern part, you have the Welsh people who were there when the Romans came in 8200, I think, or when the Romans came. Romans held this island in captivity for 400 years. So the Welsh were kind of trying to keep to themselves. And there was a group of Welsh people who they call the Britons now, stuck up here past Hadrian's Wall. and right past the Adriatic wall that the Romans built. And there's this community located around this rock. Um, and they weren't Picts, but they weren't Anglo-Saxons, and they weren't the other the other people. So there's this kingdom called Altclud, which it says Dunbar was the capital of the kingdom of Strathclyde, which actually didn't become that kingdom until after this siege. So what happened is you got these peoples living on and around this hill, and there are merchants because they're controlling things coming in and out of the Irish Sea into interior of Britain to where, the Romans were, all the Anglo-Saxons were. And Thorstein, the Vikings came down and they just wanted it. So what they did was all the people got up to their rock, their Dumbarton Rock, which is a huge place, which has places for lots of people to be up there. They didn't normally live up there. They would wander their other kingdoms and noble homes, but the real elite were stuck up there. And the Vikings just hung out at the bottom for 4 months and
Oh,
starved them. It was basically impossible to get up there because it
wow.
had been for centuries. There were ways, the roads were teeny to get up to the rock. It was this fortress that was almost impossible to control. And you could see a 360-degree view of anybody coming your way. And so the 4 month, and this is Aud's son, right?
Mhm.
Sieging, killing, and it's not just happening on the rock. They're keeping the people up there, but they're also killing everyone
Mm.
in the area and taking them as slaves. And at the end of the 4 months, their well went dry because these
Ugh.
people are trying to live on top of this rock. And this is called the Siege of Dumbarton. And it's one of the largest, they said 200 ships of thralls were taken from
Oh
there
my
and
goodness.
sent to Dublin for the slave markets.
Wow.
So Gudrid's grandfather would have been most likely 13 or 14 when this happened. And because he ends up in All's group of people that came to Iceland, he was almost certainly a pretty upper class
Yeah.
person, maybe connected to the royal king, maybe not. But they said, if he was captured during this siege, he was likely a baptized Christian of high birth before becoming a slave. So if this is her father, her grandfather, right, who was captured, um,
So that's the Christianity connection then for her
yes,
dad. Yeah.
so her dad would have been
Okay.
raised Christian. Let me see. It says by the age of 14, Vilfil would have possessed a skill set that commanded immediate respect from his Norse captors and likely explains why a woman as shrewd as Aud chose him for her inner circle. The Norse didn't just value raw strength, they admired the aristocratic virtues that Vilfil would have been refining since childhood. He would have been adept with seamanship. These Britons here in Strathclyde, which was Dumbarton Rock, but it's the Altclud tribe, were famous for their cavalry skills. And as a boy, essentially a noble's son was a professional warrior in training. So he would be adept with a spear, shield, and long knife, and he would have had courage and martial skill. A young man who could hold his own in a shield wall was seen as a potential trusted follower more than a mere thrall. He would have spoken 4 languages: Cumbric,
Wow.
Gaelic, Latin, and of course, Norse. And so he could be a diplomat. He could act as a translator. and a cultural bridge between Aud's Norse people and the Gaelic Irish people. He also being able, the ways of the water was life or death currency for the Vikings. Most likely he could have helped Aud navigate her secret ship out of Scotland.
Mhm.
Um, by the time Aud captured or inherited him, he wasn't just a slave, he was a displaced aristocrat whose upbringing made him a most competent lieutenant, which is why she ultimately gave him his own valley in Iceland, a gift reserved for family. I could go into all the reasons why I think this works. Um, but what's interesting about him then, we talk about Gudrid as this bridge, the well-traveled. Her father would have been raised, let's see, with a preservation of the Old North or the Welsh epic traditions. He would have known the tales of heroic resistance, and his people would have successfully blended pagan Celtic folklore with Christian theology. So he would have
Hmm.
kind of speaking a similar language to Aud, but she had the Norse traditions.
I wonder if that's why you're talking about her dad now, right?
Yeah,
So
her
I wonder
grandfather.
her grandfather. I wonder if that's why her dad was okay with Gudrid going to be an apprentice with a pagan family, because we established that Ohm, his friend,
Mhm.
is pagan, right?
Well,
Basically, I mean, we find that out later, but for your not only for the grandson of this Christian legacy to be okay with his daughter going to hang out with the pagans and learn from them, shows that he was a blend of this Celtic Christian world with this Norse. Yeah, it's interesting because I always
yeah,
wondered that, like, why he's so Christian, and yet he let his daughter go be tutored by pagans
yeah, so
or
it's
apprentice.
what you're saying is so right because he's not the type of Christian we understand. None of them are. They're different. And,
Yeah,
so, yeah, so he what's interesting and what's sad is if he was born highborn from Dumbarton Rock, his name would have been in the Cumbric language, which is like Old Welsh. The king of Dumbarton was actually captured with all the other people that were up there with him. So
wow,
Vilfil could have been a son of the king. Who knows what he was?
right,
Um, the name Vifil in Old Norse translates to beetle or weevil, and scholars suggest that while the name was ancient, it fell out of favor and became a common nickname for slaves. For a boy from a royal Britannic house, being renamed Beetle was a sharp demotion. And one of the saddest parts is they were raised on their oral traditions and their stories and their songs and all these things, the Celtic stuff that was this blend, or Welsh, and he would have lost all of that. So he lost his name, he lost his bearing, he lost his family. He's living in Dublin, Ireland now with a Norse woman, and we know somehow she ended up with her, w luckily. Um, so anyway, that's a lot of baggage to take,
yeah,
and,
and
um
he wasn't the grandfather. It seems like there's a streak of pride in this family too, because the grandfather, when Aud is ready to give him land, freeing him, she knows she's gonna die, or maybe it's when they first got there,
yeah.
but freeing them all, she's distributing land out to her freed slaves, um, and supporters, and he even then is kinda snarky with her, like, "Why didn't you free me before you freed everybody else before you gave them land? You're giving me land, okay, but y now free me." He's very worried about their status. He's
Mhm,
getting land, but even the grandpa is like, "You also have to free me, I don't wanna be a slave anymore," right?
mhm. And that shows up in the sagas, which means
Yeah,
that was probably really bratty for a thrall.
yeah,
Like, here she is giving him land,
and he's
but he
more worried about his
also
status.
Yeah.
I had that happen to me in a job once. They didn't have the position available that I wanted, um, but they had the money to give me a fake position and give me the raise. And I
Yeah?
remember going in the office and being like, "The title means more to me than the money." I was dumb, I was like 20, so I don't know.
Well, I mean, it
That's kinda I probably have that pride streak in me still.
for sure. I mean,
Yeah,
it's very, very sad, um,
yeah,
that I guess it says this Christian synthesis by his time, the Philid, which is, the old beliefs, had successfully blended pagan Celtic folklore with Christian theology.
yeah. 'Cause
And
that's where
his
you lose all the druids, like, we don't know a lot about the druids, and
Yeah,
it all
and
kind of disappeared.
I guess these were known as song called fili, and certain women would recite their lineage to them, you
How do you
know,
spell it?
Fili.
Not Fila, 'cause Fila is a prostitute,
Oh, no,
concubine.
Filidh.
Oh, okay.
He would have grown up hearing the Philida recite the stories of the Old North.
Wow, that's like
And
Flaga. That's
yes,
interesting. This
yeah.
is the part of everybody that has your ancestor spirit in you.
Oh, you're
Interesting.
right, because this says when he got to Iceland, he carried intellectual baggage with him while he no longer had a Fili to sing his praises. So no one could speak to he had lost the ability to recite his own geology and speak with the sophistication of a court-educated noble. So he had lost a lot. So he
Sad.
basically, in his mind, has to rebuild these noble stories now with his 2 sons, and has obviously told his sons the sad story.
Right. Yeah.
Um,
Interesting.
so
So that's some, generational trauma going on.
and what it tells me is Gudrid, they're not really Norse. They were captured by the Norse. He's lucky enough to live in Iceland, but they weren't brought up with the Norse gods. They would have been brought up with the Celtic gods. And the 2 sisters that the 2 brothers married were not most likely not Norse either. They would have been Celtic.
They could have even been slaves themselves, probably, right?
There's a very good indication because the wife he's linked to is Efri Weifel's daughter, which is a slave, obviously a slave terminology. So yeah, she was most likely Irish or Celtic or whatever. Anyway, so that's a lot of talk. We could cut that out, but
No, I think we kinda end with that a little bit and then get into her childhood. I think this is a perfect outline to talk about a couple things late on the next episode if we want to.
okay.
I think that's perfect. I think we need to know where she's coming from, because we'll talk about her pagan influence too, but to know this noble Christian thing, I'm sure her grandfather and her dad, probably her mother too, if she was also one of these elite slaves, I guess, is that a term? Uh,
Yeah, it is a term because otherwise they would be dead.
yeah,
Because that ship that Aud built to get them to Iceland, get them away, fit 25 to 30 people.
yeah,
That's a very select group. If you're talking 200 ships of thralls and slaves were taken from their
right.
homeland.
And she was smart. She didn't go directly to Iceland. She went to the Faroe Islands and married off a daughter there, kind of established loyalty there.
Mhm.
Who knows what else she did there, and then she went to the other island. Is it
The
I can't
Hebrides,
remember.
Orkney.
Orkney, yeah. Is that right? Oh,
Mhm.
it's yeah. Married a daughter off there,
Can you
you
imagine
know.
being her daughters? I guess they were her granddaughters, right? Her daughters or
Yeah, her granddaughters.
you were
Yeah,
on the
she was a
ship taking them.
grandma.
Yeah, you're
Yeah.
staying with grandma, and every time you pull it up an island, you're
You're
married but
left
fishing.
there. But then also she probably had relationships with these people too
Right,
before, right? And they could have
right.
even been loyal to her dad or her
And
husband
who were the
too.
choices for these granddaughters if she wasn't going to Norway and Iceland? There were slaves
Yeah,
and
right.
lots of people they didn't know. At least and, I think Aud had lived long enough as a girl in this culture, she probably didn't know the Norse culture very well. She was more comfortable with her thralls and the people.
Yeah, and her husband was, like I said, did not he was Norse pagan, so she would
Yeah.
have known it through him, but she didn't like it. She wanted him to convert and he didn't. And,
Mhm.
that's the other thing I wanna talk about next week is this conflict of women trying to convert their men to Christianity. And that's what I'll do. Next time I'll do the outline of different groups when they converted to Christianity throughout Europe, I think, to kind of give a little pan out a little bit of what's going on. And then talk about the pagan faith a little bit too, with what she's doing. Because
Mhm.
then as the saga goes on, we have two really interesting spiritual experiences that she has. One's very pagan and one's very Christian, but they're both very similar, I think, is in
You're
the
right.
sorceress and the
Yeah.
um but I think that was really good. I think that's interesting. We have to know that part
I
of
think
her.
it helps us understand also, when these later chronicles, because one saga has the fathers and Gudrid is very devout, and the other one has them not so much, doesn't talk about that, but to understand what kind of Christianity, what kind of language, what they understood, and what she had learned. And it is interesting that as a foster child, she grew up with the woman that we know the most that affected Gudrid would been Haldis, her foster mother. And we learn in the next segment of her life what she was learning there, which would have been the Celtic pagan practices, right? Or the
Maybe, we don't
Gallic.
know. Well, what's Hollis? Is she Norse?
She is, no, no, all of these people that are acquaintances with Thornstein and Gudrid's family, while they were living on Aud's lands,
But
they were
Orm
all Celtic.
did Orm come with him, or was Orm already in Iceland and they became friends?
It
Do we know
says
that?
that Orm was since Orm was living in Aud's lands,
Orm
it's
was?
yeah, it's pretty c I guess the point
But
is
Orm is, the grandson's generation, right? Orm
yeah,
is the guy, so Orm wouldn't have been friends with the grandfather living in those lands. He
mm-mm,
would have been friends with the son of the slave. So her
right,
dad was born and raised in Iceland, right?
mhm.
So Orm, you think, comes from the Celtic
Um, Only because
background?
a lot of sources state that because of this class distinctions happening in Iceland, if you were the son of a thrall or a freedman, you would pretty much they would hang in there. They were clannish,
Uh-huh.
so they would have been of Celtic or Briton or Pict descent.
Oh,
They would have
okay.
understood each other in that sense. So they weren't mingling with odds, the Norwegian people as much. They had their own kind of little realm. And that's
Interesting.
why I think Thornstein want didn't think Einar was good enough for his daughter because he saw
Interesting.
himself as a much higher and a
Yeah.
different
So do you
class.
think even in the pagan Christian, there's a hierarchy there, like looking down on Norse paganism versus Celtic paganism?
I
Or
think there was a
the
misunderstanding because at the same time in the island, you've got people sacrificing animals, and then you've got Odd building her chapel on you've got all these different ways
Yeah.
of being.
You've got definitely, like, Eric the Red's family, they're very Norse, they're talking about Odin, and I mean, everybody's name is Thor, you
Yeah.
know? So
Well, and it is interesting that Vilfil, named his sons, both of them have the Thor beginning to their
Mhm.
names, and Thorstein, he named one of his sons that was Gutrid's uncle. That's the name of Thorstein the Red that captured, ruined
Right.
his whole world, so it's a weird fealty almost too. I mean, yeah, it's a weird blend.
Well, if you bring the human side to it, they did have a lot of really amazing experiences together. They would have maybe bonded. Maybe I'm romanticizing it, but
I think so.
you don't it doesn't have to be drawn on, "Well, you're from here, so you hate this person. You're from here, you hate this person."
Yeah.
They were blending a lot, and as we'll learn as I can talk about next week, um, either it's a either it's a translation, an intentional translation trick of the Christian writer, translator, or there really are some truths in both religions that would make them flexible with each other of, you know,
I agree. I mean, if
beliefs
you
and
would know more than us about me about that, but it seemed like their pagan nature worship, Druidic, Celtic background, it seemed like they were simpatico in a lot of ways.
yeah.
So,
Because when I dig on, okay, what are the big problems? What are the big differences just in Christianity itself? They are big problems, like with the monastic Christians and the Roman Christians. Again, the two biggest arguments was what day to celebrate Easter. This man named Bede wrote this thick of a book on trying to calculate the appropriate day to have celebrate Easter based on the moon and the stars and the sun and the dew on the grass. There's more dew on a full moon, and so
mm,
just and how to count on your fingers, and it's the you get into the ides of a month and the nones of a month. Just it was a big issue, and then the other issue, like I said, was the hairstyle. The monastic monks wanted they would shave the back of their head and have, like, a crown, and then the Roman Catholic monks, I might be reversing this, would shave the crown of their head so their hair represented the crown of thorns, and they had to have
oh,
a big council to sit and talk about this. But then when you relate Christianity with paganism at that time, there's a lot of crossover. I wonder what their major issues were. And if there's just not a I don't know what I'm trying to say.
yeah, no,
Just
that's makes total
things
sense.
that aren't a big deal to us were a really big deal to them in separating out religions, even within their own religions. So it'd
Yeah.
be interesting to find out the difference between a Celtic paganism and a Norse paganism.
And then even the like you're mentioning, there's different flavors of Christianity because you've got monasteries dotted all up and down
Yeah.
the British Isles and Ireland, and they're all sending out their flavors. I guess the
Yes, exactly.
flavor of Christianity that Gudrid's grandfather would have learned was from the Iona
Okay.
monastery, which was
Mhm.
located just north of them.
Oh,
So
cool.
whatever that can tell us, that would kinda help us understand.
Okay.
But in either sense, the Bro code lives very strong when you see Thorstein's answer to why, the warrior in him or the family honor still lives pretty strong when he wouldn't want his daughter to be married to the son of a slave, which ironically, he is the son of a slave, which is heartbreaking.
Or there was some other issue. I don't know. I think
Yeah,
it is that I think the slave thing was
yeah.
it's a issue. You don't
It's
get rid of
it's
it
an
once
eye
it's
opener. I
yeah.
mean, it's sad because you cannot for us that loves to look at lineage and feel pretty grateful that we can, it ends with we don't know. We have to rebuild his life too, and not even we don't even know his real name.
Yeah.
So,
And
it's
aren't we lucky that that slave genealogy ends at 1000 AD as opposed
right,
to 16, you know?
right. But
Yeah.
yeah, he would have had all the think about being 14 on top of a rock, being starved and watching your family die and carted
Mhm.
away and
With
yeah.
all these Viking ships around, because they were phenomenal. Okay. Well,
Anyway, so
I
we
think this
got
was
to
good.
her proposal, which, of course, there it was a big no,
Yeah.
which so I
A
think
big no. He took
I
off. Yeah,
that yeah, so the father's so pissed. He's like,
yes.
I can't stay here anymore." And this is what starts Gudrid's travels, right?
Yeah.
In our next
Yes, so
yeah.
good job, thank goodness for Einar, I guess.
Yeah, so, I mean, if she had married Einar, I was trying to think what kinda life she would have had. Definitely not the one she had, so
Yeah, it depends on who Einar was as a man, but
he
he
was
was
a
a
dandy,
dandy.
though.
She
He was a
marries
good
another dandy, she likes those dandies.
he marries better dandies.
Yeah, she
They are
does.
pretty cool, so
Well,
alright.
that was awesome, Kim, thank you.
Thank you, and
So
I won't talk so much next
no,
time.
I love
We'll do
it.
your
It's
stuff.
good. You're giving us the bone, the vertebrae to tell all these flesh out these people. It's great.
'Kay.
So that's awesome. I love that we got to where we are because I was
Okay.
worried we'd go too fast and we have so much to talk about just in
Well,
her
I think
childhood.
what you're ready to do is what needs an episode, actually, to get us ready for how weird that
Yeah, I
prophecy
think so. We
stuff
need to
was.
give this the religious background,
Yeah.
the pagan background before we and the Christian
Mhm.
because it is, man, it is just a theme. And we're not even talking like a 20-year, it's hundreds and hundreds of years,
I
you know?
know. I
So,
know. So, okay,
cool.
good.
All right.
Hey.
Yeah, let me say end of we'll stop
Okay,
recording.
okay.
Thanks for joining us. Come to our website, thedistaffpodcast.com, and leave us your questions, comments, things you want us to research, people that you can add to, or if we're wrong about something, William Wallace was not, he was like in the 12th century, so I was wrong on him. But I think the Picts were the blue face paint threw me off. So
Yeah, well, we
yeah.
love they're yes, it's a colorful world we're
It
entering into
is.
here, and we get to
Fantastic.
go along with Gudrid as our guide,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
that's great.
Okay. Well,
Okay,
I love you. Thank you,
love you.
everybody.
Thanks.
Thanks. Okay, I'm gonna stop.